welcome Jonathan Sexton and Ms. China Brackeen.
All right, thank you guys so much. My name is Jonathan Sexton. I do a lot of things, but today I'm with the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center. We're located in Market Square, and what we do is we help creative and crazy people with ideas figure out how to build a business around what they want to do. So China and I got together about a month or two ago and started talking about, we had worked in music together before, and decided that it would be a good opportunity during Rhythm and Blooms to talk about all of these creative people out here, there's all of these artists out here, and it's fun to see them, but what you don't know many times is they are in the van 200 nights a year trying to figure out how to still pay the cell phone bill and make it worth their time. So we brought in some panelists from different pieces of the music business to kind of just talk about how do we make a living at this music thing. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the guys out here. All I want is just not to waste any time with showmanship. Come on, guys. Come on. Let's see. How about I just read you the real bios instead of making it up off the cuff. Okay, yeah, that's fine too. Let's start with, first off, one more thing I want to do is make sure that we all give Miss China Brackeen a hand on this fantastic Rhythm and Blooms Festival. If you don't know, she's the mastermind behind our whole thing. Thank you and congratulations for such an excellent panel. All right, I'm going to let the guys introduce themselves, and I'm going to start with the most talkative of them all, Mr. Mark Montgomery.
Hey, how are you? Is everybody drinking and having fun? Oh, come on. This is a pub. Get it up in the air. Hi, I'm Mark Montgomery. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. I'm a music and tech entrepreneur and a frustrated guitar player playing later tonight at the hair salon across the street for tips and booze and shots and whatever. Glad to be here.
Mike?
I'm Mike Katie. I'm also from Nashville, Tennessee. I'm also an entrepreneur. Music tech entrepreneur, just like Mark. Also a frustrated bass player, but no longer because I don't do it professionally.
All right, China?
Well,
I think you need an introduction.
I don't know, I'm probably actually the least qualified person on this panel. Actually, I was really impressed when I saw everyone's bios, but I will say I'm most likely the only former opera singer here, am I correct? So yeah, I did not try to make it in a rock band. I tried to make it as an opera singer and then decided, screw that. And went into the music business instead. I'm not really sure what the logic was there, but I do produce the Rhythm and Blooms Festival. I do artist management, public relations for a number of artists, and talent buying and festival production as well.
And China also, one of the artists, the couple that she manages is the Black Lilies, who seem to be doing very well, so she's certainly earned her chair up here, whether she wants to tell you that or not. And last, Mr. Mitchell Fox.
Mitchell Fox, I live in Nashville. I manage musicians. Frankly, just proud to be here. You have a wonderful city, and really seems like you've established the basis to grow some wonderful businesses.
And Mitchell's being modest, he's also managed bands like the Kentucky Hunters and a little band you may have heard of called Led Zeppelin. So he's also earned his chair up here. I think that there's a whole lot more than we could cover in an hour on this topic. I've spent many hours with all of you talking about how do artists continue to make a living at this when record sales really barely exist anymore. Streaming doesn't pay out like record sales do. Touring is the best way to make money, but you have to be gone all the time. It's a really hard thing. But yesterday I was talking with Mark, and I'm going to start with Mike on this one. Put you on the spot. Mark said something yesterday that was interesting to me. Someone asked him about pirating music. You know, people stealing your music, people are stealing your music. Is that your problem? Is that why it's hard to make a living as a musician and as an artist? And Mark frankly said, well, I wish someone would steal my music. My problem is obscurity. How do I get people to even know I exist? So I'm going to let you crank on that for a minute. How do you make me exist, Mike?
Something needs to be done about this microphone. How do I make it down to sex? Well, maybe to sort of paraphrase that, it's Jay Frank, who's also a fellow music tech entrepreneur in Nashville, is fond of saying you don't have a pricing problem in the music business, you have a demand problem. In other words, it doesn't really matter that your per play on Spotify is 0.0001 cents. It doesn't really matter. The real point you have is that nobody's actually listening to your shit. And if nobody's listening to your shit, you're not making any money. And if you're not making any money, you're not making music anymore. And one of my partners, Brian Rawlings, is fond of saying that music is a hobby that some people just happen to make lots and lots and lots of money on. But there really aren't that many of them who can do that. And I think it's very hard for a lot of people to accept that, and I believe that technology has helped us to democratize the ability to make some amount of money on music, but it certainly hasn't democratized the ability to make lots and lots and lots of money.
China, you've had some bands that are doing pretty well in a music business where the middle class isn't supposed to exist. You kind of carved out a middle class for a couple of your artists. Talk a little bit about how you dealt with the obscurity problem.
Well, I mean, really part of it is getting the music out there however you can, and rather than trying to fight the streaming and the file sharing and things like that, really take advantage of it and try to figure out how you can reach those fans who are hearing that music, because your real money is going to come off of touring and merchandise. It's not probably going to come off of the music sales unless you're one of the very, very few, less than 1% of the CD. I think it's 1% of 1% of the CDs that are released are actually making a little bit of money. So yeah, just trying to get out there and capitalize on every opportunity that you can, making sure that you have a solid brand and that people know what their brand is and know what to expect from that, and just getting, whether it's YouTube videos or playing everywhere and making sure that your posters are up in a town. It's pretty basic stuff. It's not rocket science. It's just making sure you're getting the word out.
Mitchell, you've been around this business for how long?
Since 1970.
So you've seen a lot of changes. You've seen a lot of changes. So what do you see? Do you see any similarities in has there always been an obscurity problem? That's the question.
Well, the answer would tend to be yes. There's more of it because there are more people recording and releasing music. So, honestly, the availability of product and services has never been this great. The mere notion of having your records available 24/7 forever 10 or 15 years ago is virtually unheard of. If your record wasn't stocked in a store for, let's say, 6 months while the record company or yourself was working a single, and if it wasn't sold, it was returned, at that point you can only really deal with records out of your trunk. So now, except for the fact that record revenue is not what it used to be, and because of that, publishing revenue is not what it used to be. You have so many opportunities to get your word out there and your music. There's virtually no excuse for not at least starting small, which is really what people used to do in the 50s when they had what they call a singles business. When they released a single and people liked that, they would then go out and seek out more of that music and hopefully buy a record, an album, we used to call it. So really the only real, and it's a significant change because there is so much competition out there, so it's really an awareness issue more than anything, and most people kind of, I guess, have these dream notion of grandeur, going, I want to be the next, Beyonce or Lady Gaga. Those type of artists are very fortunate to get with very big labels and have influential management or publishers or rich people behind them who give them some sense of visibility above and beyond the fray of what really 99.9% of the people, the arena in which they interact is locals, their friends, and then their friends' friends, and because the things of social media, but the notion of what Chris Anderson said of the long tail, it's really the fact that you have no excuse to ever stop trying something either contemporary or new because at least your product's available out there. I mean, years ago, if your record didn't hit in 6 to 8 weeks because your first or second single died, they shelved that record. And they maybe gave you a couple of cases just to sell out of your trunk, but that was really it. Now, although it is a .00003 payout on the Spotifys of the world, you know, you can still go in and record a record fairly inexpensively, make a couple of hundred of them and sell them for $5 or $10 a piece. You start with that and kind of grow from there.
Mark, you earned your share here in a lot of ways, but one of which was you were one of the first people to sell music online back in the 90s. That was when the internet was on dial-up.
Yeah.
Right?
Barely.
So, did you see any of this coming?
Any of what? Well, I mean, I want to go back to the other point for a sec. How many people in here are in the business some way or form? Hands. Artists, keep them up. Managers? Oh, a manager right up front. Okay. Well,
You manage your own bands.
there you go. Well, you have to sometimes. Half of nothing is nothing, right? So, it's not a good split. I think the key to all of this, and China, I'd love to hear your opinion on this, is a great song. If the product isn't absolutely great, you can wrap it in all kinds of marketing, but it's still a crappy song. And I think that when you think about the careers of the artists that anyone in here who's an artist aspires to be, there's a great song attached to that artist, or in many cases, many great songs.
Yeah, well, what I will say is you can make it without a great song, but you got to have a huge budget behind you. You've got to have people with the right connections, and you've got to have a lot of money to spend on ad campaigns and just blowing it out there to make sure that your song gets to people. So most of us probably don't have those connections and probably don't have those bottomless pockets. And so at that point, it's got to be a great song. It's also got to be, if you're a performing artist, it's got to be an amazing performance, because everybody can go on YouTube and they can look at you. And here's the thing, is that every time you perform, there's somebody in your audience with their cell phone and they're taking a video. So if it's an off night and that's what makes it on YouTube, and people go in and they search for you, guess what they see? It's not the nice, professionally produced, perfect video that you put together. It's that really crappy night where you phoned it in and you were drunk on stage and whatever was wrong with you that day, it just didn't work. So you've got to make sure that every time you go out there, you realize it's a job. And I think one of the things that I run into a lot with musicians, especially musicians who are just really kind of starting to do it professionally, they got into it because of the love of music, right? And you should never lose that love, but you do have to understand that work, no matter what your work is, sometimes there are parts of it that are really hard and there are parts that you don't love to do. And just because you love playing music, that doesn't mean that you're gonna love promoting your shows, or that you're gonna love not drinking 8 beers before you get up on stage, or some of those things. But you do have to take it seriously enough. If this is something you want to do as a profession, take every aspect of it seriously enough that you are really putting your best stuff out there every single day.
I think that's a great segue into the next idea I had in terms of starting a conversation, was the idea of team. I've always, as an artist and in business, gotten by on my winning, charming personality. Everyone up here knows that, right? You're supposed to laugh when I say that. You don't, everyone has different strengths. So talk a little bit about playing to your strengths, knowing how to form a partnership or find your team in some of the different pieces of the puzzle. Anyone can take it.
I'll call that the fifth Beatle. So there's a big difference, and anybody who wants to sit down, that table just opened up and I think they left some food. There you go, grab it, young lady. The fifth Beatle concept is simply that you find and the key word here is competent believer. Your mother, your sister, your brother, your wife, your best friend is not a competent believer. They're gonna love you no matter what you do. So you need somebody who's willing to give you honest feedback about where you are. And this idea that anyone can make a record is a good thing and a bad thing. It puts more wood on the pile. It's harder to find the great stuff in that pile. But the idea of having someone around you who can help you move the business forward, and to be clear, make sure that they're vested in a way that allows them to participate if things get really good. So you don't want to just hand the keys to the kingdom over, but you want to have an upfront exchange with somebody and say, if you can help me build this business, then I'm going to cut you in on the action. And if you can't, well then you're going to be fired and we're going to find somebody who can. And that sounds really ruthless, but that's how you have to do it. If you want to play the game and do it well, then you have to make the decision that you're going to run it like a company. And that's really, I would bet, how you run your band's businesses.
I'd also, I'd just add that for the last 4 or 5 years, we have been perpetuating the myth of the DIY artist. And I think that there are a handful of artists you can point to and say that they did some things themselves, but I guarantee you they didn't do everything. I don't know any artist actually that does everything themselves, not a single one. And for all of the tools that are built, and I run a company that builds a tool to help artists do things themselves.
It's called Band Posters. You can find it at getbandposters.com.
But I'm not living under the impression that every artist is going to do everything themselves. I just take one little piece of that puzzle and take it off of their hands, which is making posters. But there's an awful lot of things that tool doesn't fix, and I don't think that there's any single tool that fixes every problem.
Well, everybody tends to think the team starts with a manager or somebody in a managerial position. Somebody does have to take the lead, because invariably, it's usually a drummer. They've got to get up at a certain time to get the rest of the guys up at a certain time so they can get to the gig on time.
Did you just say the drummer does that? Are you
Maybe
sure?
not, I was just
Do
kidding.
you remember what band you
Maybe I
were
was
working
just
on?
kidding. Yeah. But again, everything for me, nothing really, and I hate to kind of come back to this all the time, nothing much has really changed as far as the basic ingredients in success, which tends to be a lot of hard work, a lot of creativity in the process of creating or finding good material, and then the ability to actually learn how to play your instruments, perform, and just kind of turn people on in an audience in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's a club owner, another musician in town, or just one of your own band members, and I completely agree with Mark, your mother most likely will not tell you that you sucked last night. It's just not what's going to happen. So sometimes you just have to have people around you who will be brutally honest to your benefit, because as a manager, we had this discussion over lunch today, we only really succeed based on the success of the artist. So one way, shape, or form, you've got to bring people into your circle of influence, if you will, that can be supportive of what you're trying to do, but can add actually value to what it is, versus just kind of patting on the back and saying, oh honey, that was just great last night. So it'd be good for somebody, regardless of whether they're professional or otherwise, to quote unquote take some lead position as a manager, and at least have some vision as to where the band wants to go, and at least point them in that direction, and then as a team, hopefully, kind of get there together.
Yeah, I can't stress honesty enough, and having someone who can really tell you what needs to be improved. Having someone you can have those really uncomfortable conversations with and still love each other the next day. And I don't mean love, as a boyfriend, girlfriend, mother, father, anything like that, but the thing to me that's important, the thing I tell every single one of my clients is, I'm not the kind of manager who's going to pick up the phone and make that one perfect phone call that changes your life. Maybe someday I will be, but I'm not. But what I can tell you is that I'm not working with anyone who I don't believe in 100%. And I've bought into their vision, I've bought into their product, and I absolutely will work my butt off as passionately as they will to make sure that they succeed. And that's who you need on your team, is someone who gets where you want to go and someone who's willing to do what it takes to get there, but who can also look you in the eye and say, you know what, that sucked, and you need to fix it. And here are the things that I need to see improved before the next show or the next album or whatever it is that you're doing. It's just really important to be able to have those conversations with each other.
I'm really glad you said that, because an important point I wanted to make was, I can't remember I heard say it not too long ago, but the cavalry isn't coming. No one is going to find you.
What I say is there's no magic bullet.
Yeah.
I think every time you see a band that's blown up, if you really do the research, there's 10 years of hard work behind them. It wasn't that spot on Letterman that made them famous, and it wasn't that song that they sold to a movie that made them into you, because in my position as a manager, it's not just me sitting there scraping 20% off the top of what you make. I'm investing in your career. I'm spending money to help move you forward before I ever get paid a dime. And there are some clients that I have for years on end that I spend a lot more than I take in, because I know that someday there's going to be a payoff. But people aren't going to do that until they know that there's something there worth gambling on.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and that happens at the highest level. I mean, I hear people all the time, and everybody up here's heard it. Oh, if I can just find a label. And sometimes it's surprised people still say that, but it's true. That the same as there's the myth of the DIY artist, there's the myth of the label. A quick anecdote is a couple of our friends, a guy named John Grady, who runs Capitol Records in Nashville, and he just signed an artist. Their band's called Striking Matches. They're fantastic, and I'm sure they think that their dreams are coming true, or most people think that around them, but actually he's been working with them for almost 4 years, developing them and helping them get their sound together, get the studio together. So even someone at the top layer of the music business who can make those calls and who does know everybody still can't do that unless you're right?
I mean, I'll just say, I ran digital media at Warner Brothers Records for 2 years in Los Angeles. It's not what you think it is.
Digital media.
No, well, that isn't either. But the major label deal is not what you think it is. And when we talked earlier about you have to have a quality product. You have to. In the 2 years I was there, I worked probably close to 100, maybe 150 records. And I can point to 4 that I thought were quality. And you just can't polish a turd. You really can't. Like, there's no way to market your way out of a bad record. But at the same time, putting all this together, you have to do the legwork to get there, but then you have to keep doing the work to make the great records. The 10 great records that are going to make your career. Not the one, which I think a lot of people think you're doing.
I just wanted to add something what China actually made mention of. You might not think that next phone call will actually make the difference in that band's career, but if the call isn't made, no one will ever know that. I can actually, without going into a really long dissertation about the success or relative failure of bands I've worked with, I'll just use the Headhunters as a perfect example. I'm at Swan Song, the drummer dies. I leave with the Headhunters because they almost got signed to Swan Song. It took me 14 years to get them a record deal. They record 8 tracks for $2,300 in 3 days. We sell 2.5 million records, and then the lead singer leaves. So like at the end of the day, you kind of go, well, out of all that, what would have happened without any one particular incident occurring? But the important thing is we'll never know who that next phone call might be who could actually make the difference in your career. Because you might not, in a preconceived mode, think, oh, I can just, by the way, there are certain people on this panel who could probably pick up the phone and get more things done with that one phone call. But there's, again, teamwork, follow through, great product, all the other things everybody's thinking about. But it's people like China who are willing to make the 10th, 15th, 20th phone call that day, which increase your chances for a successful connection sometimes. So the adage is, make the phone call. You have no idea the reaction or who you actually might get on the phone.
The other 2 points I'll make are, if you ever think that you've perfected what you're doing, hang it up, because you haven't. I mean, you're giving up at that point. You always need to work to improve what you're doing. I don't care what level you're on. But the other thing is that very few people on your team are irreplaceable. So if something's not working, don't be afraid to make that change. Even if it's your lead guitar player, even if it's your manager, even if it's someone who you think is really, really important. If it's not working, make sure you're having conversations with them along the way. Make sure they know what's not working and they're given a chance to improve. But if they can't improve to the point that you need them to move you to the next level, it's uncomfortable and it's hard and nobody likes to do it, but sometimes you have to cut your losses and move on, and it's what's best for the band.
If it's the bus driver, wait till you get home to fire.
The one thing I would add to that is I've worked with a lot of big artists, Kanye West and Pearl Jam, and I'm working with Kenny Chesney right now. And if you want to know why Kenny can sell 30 stadiums out, 30 to 40 stadiums. This is 85,000 to 100,000 people. 10 years running and into the foreseeable future. It's because he doesn't phone anything in. I've watched him in his processes. I've watched Pearl Jam in their processes. They absolutely mean business all the time. And it's reflected in the success of what they've built. And I think you've seen some of this when people take their foot off the gas, or the car swerves, and it can get ugly. Bands can get really ugly in spots, and somehow that band, Pearl Jam, has managed to keep it completely in the lane and have it on their own terms, in a way that very few others could ever have it, including going up against a behemoth.
And every day of your life trying out a new web service or something, that's the next thing, great thing for artists. So I would like to just hear from everybody about what works and what doesn't for you personally, in terms of like on the web. Are you using YouTube and monetizing YouTube, or do you use Reverb Nation, or do you use fill in the blank service day in and day out? I'll start with you, Johnny, since I'm looking at you.
Well, and I'm not just saying this because I'm sitting on the panel here, but I have been really impressed with band posters. It's really kind of made things a lot easier on my end. It's not perfect all the time for me because of the volume of posters I'm sending out. Sometimes it's just a little too pricey, but I think if you're not doing 250 dates a year, it's not too pricey at all. It's a lot cheaper than what you would do if you had to go to Kinko's and you have to print your posters and mail them out. For those of you who haven't used the service, you literally go in, you can pull your tour dates in from Reverb Nation or from whatever website. I'm sure you can tell us all exactly what website you pull from, and upload your art, and it will spit out posters for 10 different shows, personalized with date, venue, location, and mail them for you for $15 a show. So it's pretty awesome. And there are times when, I don't have people in my office who can sit there and stuff a million envelopes full of posters for my next 45 shows, and I can just go to the website and in 3 minutes have all of those taken care of and they're getting to the venue and it's happening on time. So I really appreciate that and love working with it. Another thing along similar lines, and again, it's not perfect, but it's a really good tool, and for some artists I think it probably is perfect, is artistdata.com, which can not only feed your websites feed your tour dates to your website so you have an up-to-date calendar showing all of your shows that are coming up, but the back end lets you put in all the show details, and you can actually create a show sheet to send all your band members, telling them what time they need to arrive at the venue and what time the show is and how much they're getting paid and what the merch deal is and all of those sort of advanced details, so that everybody can stay on the same page.
What do you think, Mike?
I also thank you.
Thank you so much.
No, seriously, thank you. I swear to God I did not pay for it.
You did. I do expect a lot of credits for band.
We'll talk after the panel.
Actually, if anybody wants a coupon code, by all means find me after, and I'm happy to. What I was going to say is actually not a tool specifically, but I'm going to say that if you are a quote-unquote DIY artist, if you're doing some things yourself, I would take all the money that you're about to spend on a publicist, no offense to any of the publicists in this room, take all that money and give it to a video editor. You cannot make a big enough impression on YouTube right now. There is no such thing. And so if there's any single piece of advice I would give to artists right now, it would be that. Take all of your money and put it into great video content.
Ditto. Oh, and by the way, make sure you have great songs.
Great songs with great videos on YouTube.
Well, yeah, and I think you hit on something really interesting. If I see one more crappy YouTube video, there is absolutely no excuse anymore. I'm gonna out. Johnny and I are in a band. We're it's a hobby till it's not a hobby, and we did four songs. Basically recorded it live, spent $700 front to back, and we've got three great pieces of content. We won't, and when you don't put it out because you have it. So if it's not what you want it to be, then either wait or just don't do it. But the Canon 5D has changed. I mean, this thing, you can make HD videos with this. Approach your business and your marketing concepts with the same creativity you approach writing songs with and performing with, and you're going to do a lot better. The whole process is actually very creative, except of course for sending posters, which I use band posters for, by the way.
If you are an artist, you are the most creative person on your team. Don't forget that either. I mean, I think that's really important. No matter how creative your marketing guy seems, you're more creative.
Well, you know, all the things on the social, online, I appreciate, and really it's a wonderful thing that everybody has access to that generally for free. I mean, I understand the notion of shooting and editing videos are relatively inexpensive, but the idea of playing out and honing your craft live is, there's nothing more meaningful to an audience or a potential audience or fan than making that connection across the floor someplace. As much as you can do with that, Johnny and I actually met with a young man yesterday, or the day before, who's kind of an aspiring artist. He sings, plays a little guitar, and he's hopefully not in the room, but at the end of the day, kind of, I said, well, how much, live experience do you have? He goes, well, I never really played out live. So I said, well, one of the greatest joys, and it's fearful, but actually seeing somebody react to what you're doing and getting that sense of positive or negative reinforcement so you can adjust accordingly. But for me, all the acts I've ever worked with or aligned myself with have always been great live performers. Because leaving that room, to actually be able to go into the crowd afterward and just kind of do a meet and greet and actually make that physical connection with people, you just can't get that on a two-dimensional screen. I don't care if it's this big or this big. So as much as you can, get out there, and you don't have to get in a van and travel 300 miles. Do a house concert. Just get one of your buddies to get 10 or 15 of your friends there just to get the experience of getting dressed, getting to, starting, ending, and then kind of do the meet and greet and go home. Maybe sell a couple of t-shirts or CDs. And going through that process, it's really no different than going to Madison Square Garden. It's just a bigger place, a lot more money, and hopefully a lot more joy at that level. But the idea is just go out there and kind of just really make that connection in a physical space with your audience.
By the way, you're probably going to make a lot more money at a house concert than you will at a club show at a certain level. So house concerts are awesome, 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 and I can't recommend them enough. But I also want to say a little something in defense of the publicist, because I am one. But I do think it's important for certain bands. They really do need publicists. If you are not able, if there's not someone on your team who is able to stay on top of publicizing your tour dates so that you can actually get people to come to your shows, and not just sending out a press release, not just hitting a button that sends out something to calendar listings, but calling television stations and getting on those morning shows and doing radio in studios and those things. And this is another kind of, I alluded to it earlier, the parts of the job that you may not always love. I bet getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning after you played a gig to go do something on TV for free is not something that you love necessarily, but you would be amazed at how many people see those things. People have the news on while they're getting ready for work, and they might not be the people who come to your show that night, but they might go online and buy a CD. Or the next year when you come through, they might go, oh, I know that band, I saw them, they were really awesome. You never know who's watching. So get into those radio in studios, get into those television stations. Make sure you have someone who can schedule this for you. And then when you're at a point where you're releasing albums on a national level, you also need someone who has connections with national media and can help you promote it. But again, just like with a manager, you need to make sure that your publicist is someone who gets what you're doing and gets what they're selling. Anybody who's representing you needs to be able to sell the authentic product that you're producing, or it is never going to work.
Where do you think the threshold for that is, right? Like, I just started a band, I'm into publicists. If you could just be my publicist, I would be you too. I'd be like, next year I'd be on the Super Bowl. And so I agree with your point, but I do think there's a threshold in there somewhere where that turns over. Like, okay, now you need a publicist. Kind of back to like, what do I do next? What do you feel like that threshold is?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a magic time in a band's evolution where you need that. I think you really got to take a good assessment of who is already on your team. Who are your band members? What are their strengths? What jobs are they doing? And before you ever bring in a manager or a publicist or anything else, structure that band so that you have someone who's responsible for settling shows, and you have someone who's responsible for publicizing your shows, and work to everybody's strengths. But when you find out that either it's too much work to be in the van all day and then playing a show and then also trying to promote the shows and also trying to advance and settle the shows, that's when you start bringing someone in. Or when you find that it's not too much work, but it's just not working, and you need someone who has a different skill set, then that's when you need to bring that person in. One thing I do think is really important, you get to a point, artists need to be creative. And the more an artist focuses on the business side of things, the less they are able to create and really put out great art. And so having those great songs and having those wonderful videos and having the product that's going to kill the live show people love, it takes constant rehearsals and constant songwriting and, you know, writing 10 songs that suck before you get the gym. And so if all of the business of the music is distracting you from being an artist, that's when you need someone else on your team.
That's right. And at some point, it will. Right? But when you get going, it's all on you. So let's move on to the question Q&A piece. So,
I have a question. So there's a lot of other people on the team, right? We're talking about this now.
yeah, let's just do the fun one.
I was just gonna say.
So we mentioned before, there's beyond the bands and beyond the people in the band, there is a possibility of having a manager, and a road manager, and a publicist, and a video editor, and a photographer, and an accountant, yeah, and an investor, and all these. So what's the, if you're going to just have one at a time and build it, what would be one of the, would it be a manager? Would it be
Well, trying to correct me if I'm wrong, most publicists, because they actually can achieve something kind of almost immediately, see something in print, get on a TV show, something of that nature, tend to assume some managerial roles because they have to make sure the artist gets to the interview at a certain time, and it might actually be a journalist going to a show, so they have to make sure the band gets to the show on time, things of that nature. But typically, somebody in a managerial position would be the best one to have, but if they do have complementary skills, like the first other thing really would be a publicist. But again, these are, you know, a producer in the music business, hypothetically somebody goes into a studio, picks songs, musicians, arrangements, tries to get the thing recorded, mixed, mastered properly. Okay. You can go into any number of studios and they go, who's the producer? And what do they do for it? It's kind of, it goes from here to here. Some guys do everything. You get a guy like Mutt Lange, short of actually singing on the records, does everything. He has guys in AC/DC, Def Leppard, people of that nature. But the first person is somebody you can relate to creatively, who understands your vision as an artist, where you might want to go. And that tends to be a manager per se, but really I think, as from my experience, a kind of cross hybrid manager publicist is really the next person. Just to ask at the threshold, when you're busy enough that you can't handle everything and still show up and perform properly, you might want to get some help.
Yeah, I'm going to say it goes back to that assessment of the skills in your band. Because for some people it's going to be a manager, for some people it's going to be a tour manager.
Right.
Because you really need someone making sure you actually get up in the morning and get to the gig and you get paid before you leave. Because the number of musicians who just forget to get the money before they walk out the door, then they drive 8 hours and you might never get that money. You know, so looking at what you need and finding that person that fits. And if you can find a jack of all trades, grab it. If it's someone who believes in you and can really do things you need to do and can do 5 roles, awesome.
Mike, do you have anything to add there?
Not really. I mean, I think that's spot on. We find a jack of all trades. I even had it in my speech yesterday that wearing a lot of hats is not a good idea, but I actually think that that's sort of the beauty of having a band, is that you've got a bunch of people who have a bunch of different skills, hopefully, that go beyond playing drums. Yeah, I mean, I think managers wear an awful lot of hats, and so that sort of ties into this whole thing. Most managers today are not just managers; they're marketing teams and they're publicists and they're booking agents in some cases. I mean, they're all over. Yeah, I mean,
I think the managers, the power is shifted to the manager in the business generally. So a manager, I think, is a big piece. But I do think what you touched on in my mind is this goes back to me harping about the great song. Part of how you get a great song is by having somebody in there who's not your mother, who can make suggestions. Minor suggestions can make a huge difference in the creative process. Or you can bring in someone like Mutt, who would literally reshape songs. I mean, Def Leppard would not be what Def Leppard is without Mutt Lange. They were just a bunch of drunk Englishmen, and he turned them into that iconic, and it was all about really his ability to take the core song and turn it into something incredibly memorable.
Well, let me just say this also relative to the label, if you will. And I'm not a name dropper in the least, but we're in a forum where it might be meaningful. When I started at Swan Song, I was 21 years old. I basically asked him, what should I do? He said, anything we ask of you. At the time, I moved up the ladder, but there were only 5 or 6 of us because we were distributed through Atlantic and we and booked by big international companies. But the reality was, I always would kind of wonder what my title was, and they said it's just whatever you're good at and getting done. So it's really, what do you need to get done? Find somebody to get that done for you. If you want to call them your manager, and typically managers, I can tell you, I've done everything short of driving a tour bus. Everything you can imagine. And so it's really not what they call a person, and I understand it's important to kind of look for lists of people, or look for a manager or look for a publicist, but really just what needs to be done and find somebody who's capable of doing that. If it happens to be a manager or a publicist, fine, but usually managers will be, I mean, everything short of having a commercial license to drive a bus, they should be capable of doing.
Yeah, when people ask me what managers do, I say, in my case, I do everything except get up on stage and make music.
Right.
Because it's what it takes to get the job done at the end of the day. I have to do it.
Who's got a question?
I would call myself an inspiring artist manager. I went to Belmont University, studied music business there, and had the opportunity of interning with a couple management firms. I got to see what managers go through every day, and I told myself this is what I want to do.
You're crazy.
So, and I graduated in December, and now I'm here. What do you guys recommend? What do you guys think is the best, most efficient way to go find those acts?
So you're here in Knoxville, or you're just here?
I'm living here now.
Okay.
I want to stay.
Let's go do it.
Yeah, I would go out tonight and find the band that melts your face off, and then I would try to offer them help for free.
Yep.
Simple as that.
Go do it.
My first management client, which was the Black Lilies actually, the reason I became their manager was because I started doing things. I started sending CDs to radio stations and getting them airplay. Things started happening. And what Cruz, who's the band leader, said to me was, I've had dozens of people come up to me and say, hey, I could manage your band. Hey, what can I do to manage your band? What can I do to be involved? And he's like, not one of them ever just did it and got results until you. And I didn't even know I was trying to be a manager. I was just trying to be helpful and get great music out there and promote it, and I was formerly marketing director at AC Entertainment, and worked at Bonnaroo, and I had a lot of radio and television connections, and so I was just kind of doing my thing, promoting, and all of a sudden he's like, wait, nobody's ever done this. I need you. So yeah, get out there and help, get results, do whatever you can to get the bands that you really love noticed, and then have a conversation with them and say, let's do this for real.
But Mark is right. You got to find the band that really just is point melt your face. Something that you could really make an emotional attachment to their music, ultimately their personalities, if you get a chance to meet them. And believe me, there'll be enough opportunity to find out what should be done next. And to China's point, just go out and do it.
All right, thank you.
9 o'clock tonight across the street, the hair salon, come by.
But also don't be creepy about it. There's a lot. There's being helpful and then there's just being weird. So don't be weird.
One thing I'd add is find a mentor, too. Find a manager who's been a manager for a really long time that you can ask questions and get help, because mentoring is a really powerful thing.
Your shirt is everything. I love it.
Thanks. Who's got a question? Come on. There we go. Jeremiah, dude, come through.
So I feel like personally I have some decent songs and stuff. I'm to the point where I want to move forward with promotion, marketing and stuff, and I'm talking about we've got a budget together, we have the money for the budget. Tell me where to allocate it. My YouTube is my strongest part of my social networking right now because we have what I feel is a good storefront right now for our music, YouTube. And I got money to put at it, so where do I put it?
Where do I spend my money?
I make pop music, so live shows only benefit me once you've heard my song.
Yeah.
You're stumped.
I think marketing is where you put your money. And if you're in pop, you're going to be reaching people Digitally, I do think you put some money into a publicist, especially if your YouTube is already cooking, like you say. Do you have a manager?
Do you have records out?
I have a video editor. I also have an experiential marketing expert.
He's a DIY artist. There he is, the one you see.
I can get most of the hats to balance for a while, except for the publicist management part.
Is it radio friendly stuff?
Yeah.
You may want to spend some money on promotion if you think you've got to change that.
I mean, it's all
Great videos, and you can get them on MTV or, you know, not even just MTV, but the regional channels. People do pay attention, even though, you know, you think they don't, you think MTV doesn't play music, it still does, and they still do.
You guys ever worked with Topspin?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You like Topspin?
I'm on their board, no comment.
Well, I love a comment because of the information I get from them seems to be something that actually moved forward versus a lot of like, I think that Reverb Nation's a waste of my time.
It is.
What do you want to use Topspin for?
I just want people to watch my YouTube video, that's it.
They're not really.
Oh, so you're using the artist, you're using the marketing
Artist
component.
side.
Yeah, that actually does work really well.
Yeah, it's really weird from the artist side to try to navigate it. It's not well put together.
No comment.
Yeah.
So the main marketing tools that are built into it also exist in a number of other places, right? So I mean, what Topspin made famous was media for email trade, right? You can do that in a million different ways. Once you've got your email list built up, you can message to an email list in a million.
Who just bought you? Who just bought Topspin? I can't.
Well, the piece of Beats kind of, but also Cinderblock bought a part of it. It's a long, complicated transaction that no one's quite sure what happened.
Well, whatever happened, Topspin created a Beats account for me already, and I'm already on there, and I didn't know
Sweet.
until they emailed me back.
Good.
So Topspin, good job you put this budget into YouTube, AdWords.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Google.
advertising, you know,
If you search for
Facebook has completely changed their algorithms now, so that really,
Facebook's
unless you're
hard.
doing paid ads, you're not gonna reach an audience. But if you've got a great video and you want people to see it, you can make it a sponsored ad and you can set your targets. And it's really pretty cost effective for what they do.
Facebook style.
Facebook
I thought it
is.
was kind of high.
I mean, you can spend $100 and get some pretty, like, I'm talking, you know, for a small campaign, $100 will actually get you some eyeballs. And if it's really watching those videos, I think Facebook would be a good way to go because everybody is still on it. And then finding those other sort of networks where you can place your video and advertise it would be helpful too.
Listen, I hate to be the old guy in the room,
But you are.
but I am. Everything everybody's speaking of today, you should only know on a relative basis how fortunate you all are to have all these tools. No, I'm serious.
He is.
YouTube, you're actually on TV as much as you want to be. I know you call it a computer, but it's a visual impression on a two-dimensional object that projects audio and visual images of who you are when and wherever you want to have that. You used to have to get on TV through a programmer, and there are only 4 or 5 stations per market. You got to understand, by the way, it's a relative statement, so if you don't know from that, this is all, as my daughter would say, I'm of this generation. But she tells me she plays, it was Will Hogue playing a song, some obscure track from an album 3 or 4 years ago. I said, where'd you hear that? She goes, on iTunes Radio. I said, so you can actually just go on, I'm playing somewhat stupid to it, so you can just go online and like sample these things, and it actually, there's a thing called a discovery system that actually prompts certain things based on your listening habits. They used to call that DJs and program directors at radio stations. But again, in New York, maybe there are half a dozen stations you can listen to. Now, none of us in this room will ever live long enough to see and hear everything that's out there. So it's amazing. Just understand really how fortunate you are going forward. Somebody will figure out how to monetize the sale of recorded music again.
Well, that's
that
what
will happen.
What I would add to that is there's not, I don't think, ever been a better time to be in the music business than right now. And so in your case, if this thing is making money, and you're achieving some modicum of success, the thing I would be doing is I would find somebody who can help pour gas on that, which in my mind would be a manager. So I'd go find somebody. What's your favorite artist?
My favorite artist is the Deftones, and that's not the kind of music I make.
Okay, well, so what's the favorite artist and the kind of music you make?
Steve Aoki.
Okay, so who manages him?
his, I don't know the name, and he has a label called Dim Sum.
Yeah, so then I would be calling them up on the phone and saying, hey dude, I got X number of views on YouTube. You want to sit down and have a conversation? I'll fly to New York.
Is that really a realistic format?
Yes,
I could-
it's
I could-
absolutely-
I made those conversations and like, I always did better, like we used to fake our manager like by using an anagram of my name. And we
Yeah.
got so many more bookings than when I was calling.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
so we'll talk to you after. This is a longer conversation. Maybe we'll manage you.
Real quick, I think you have a really unique thing too because you mentioned EDM, that you make EDM music. So that particular brand of music has a very unique point of.
Audience size.
No, promotional tool, which is club DJs. Like, you have the ability to put your music in their hands for free, and if they like it, they'll play it for hundreds of people, thousands of people, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people. Use that as much as you possibly can.
And if you don't make the phone call, you'll never know. It's just that simple. To whom? Whomever. And we know the right person has some notion of what to say and do based on their response, but just make the phone call.
Well, and another thing I don't think anybody's really talked about on the touring front, if you do have a budget, you can buy on to opening slots on tours. So if there's an artist that really fits what you're doing and you've got enough money to make it worth their while to tour with them, if they're selling out whatever kind of venue it is that you want to play, that may be a really good place to invest your money. And I will say, as much as we talk about how physical products don't sell, people don't buy CDs, the one place they do sell is at a show, because people want to have something tangible to take home. They want something that you can autograph for them. People buy CDs like crazy at shows. So if you're in front of the right audience and you've perfected your live show and you've got that material you can put in their hand at the merch table, it's pretty great.
Yeah, but have your shit together. Don't do that without having a full line of merch. You need to make sure that you're ready for that. But you're in a good position. You just have to figure out what to do next. It sounds to me.
The theme, what to do next. What? Matchmaking. Hey,
What's EDM?
what time is it?
It's 10 or 20 till 6.
Okay. So we have about 5 more minutes. We have time for one more question? I mean, yes, we do have time for one more question. So who asked the question? All right, so a couple of you focused on how making a great song is really the key for an artist. But then, John, you mentioned that if you don't have a great song, it's about having money behind you and connections. So do you think from an artist's point of view, they care more about getting their songs out to a bunch of people or knowing what those people think about their music?
I think it really depends on the artist. I mean, there are some artists whose goal is to be famous at all costs, and I don't really care what you think about them. I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff you can hear on the radio that even the artist is going to tell you it's not quality. But they're making money off of it, so okay, cool. There are other artists who really take the art part of it very seriously, and they want to have that incredible end product, and they'd rather have 1,000 really hyper committed fans who love what they're doing than 3 million people who just want to buy it. And you just got to take a look at what your goals are as an artist and get there accordingly.
If there is anything that I can do right now that would make you stop playing music, stop playing music. If I could give you $1 million and you would never pick up your guitar again, then you probably shouldn't pick up your guitar again. You should only do this game if it is the only thing in the world that you can do.
That's such an amazing point, because
It's over.
there are, he wins. The award. There are so many artists that I've talked to that, there was one who I loved the music they were making, but it's like, you book them on a tour and they go on tour day one and they're like, oh, this is hard, I want to go be an actor instead. I'm gonna go work in a coffee shop instead. I really love just like living in the woods for 6 months. It's like, if you don't want to do this, stay in and out. If it doesn't consume you, if you can't, you need to be to the point where you live and breathe this, where when you're not on a stage and you're not writing a song, you're still seeing things that inspire you to write a song. And if that's your life, if you can't live without being a musician, that's when you should be a professional musician.
Well, let's give a round of applause to our amazing panel. Thank you, Nancy, Richard Williams Festival, and Knoxville Entrepreneur Center, and Boyd's Jig and Reel for having us here today.
And if you don't have tickets. You can buy them in front of Patrick Sullivan's. We have day passes. You need to come, and we're at the Knoxville Botanical Garden tomorrow too.
Yes, tomorrow. Yes,
And use band posters.
I